Welcome to the heart of baseball history, the National Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Missouri. This museum stands as a tribute to the legacy and the incredible athletes of the Negro Leagues who forever changed the world of sports. Founded in 1990, this museum preserves the rich history of African American baseball players, many of whom played in the Negro Leagues long before Jackie Robinson broke the Major League Baseball's color barrier. Inside, we'll step into the early years of the Negro Leagues where players were not just athletes, but pioneers. These leagues were born from a time when segregation kept talented African American players from playing in the majors. But despite facing discrimination and limited opportunities, these players showcased remarkable skills, making their mark on the game forever. Every artifact that we see here inside the museum represents not just a team, but a community and a movement that fought for equality both on and off the field. We will talk about and take a look at 7 of the major artifacts found inside the museum as we learn a little bit about the history of the Negro Leagues baseball. Baseball, America's pastime, had its origins in the mid-1800s, but from the very beginning it was a game defined by segregation. African Americans were barred from playing in Major League Baseball, forcing them to find alternative ways to showcase their talents. Before the official formation of the Negro Leagues in 1920, African American players were already participating in baseball. In the 1880s, there were a handful of professional colored teams, including the Cuban Giants, one of the first organized African American teams to play in front of crowds. The Cuban Giants were groundbreaking not just because they played professionally, but because they were some of the first African American players to be recognized for their exceptional skills on the field. They were one of the most well-known teams of their era, proving that talent existed everywhere, even in an era of racial exclusion. As the years passed, African American baseball grew at an unofficial level. In the 1890s, many African American players, including those from the famous Buffalo Soldiers, were recruited to play in the many independent leagues and barnstorming teams across the country. These teams didn't have the luxury of major stadiums or contracts, but they played anywhere they could, on dirt fields, in small towns, or at makeshift ballparks. While the major leagues saw only white players, the men in these leagues were creating the foundation for what would later become the Negro Leagues. They used hand-me-down equipment or whatever they could find to make do, but the talent was undeniable. The athletes were often as good, if not better, than their white counterparts. Before Rube Foster's vision came to life, many pioneer players were already leaving their mark. Frank Grant, a star second baseman, was known for his incredible defensive skills and speed. Bud Fowler, another early star, is often regarded as one of the first African American players to play professionally in the North, helping bridge the gap between segregation and integrated baseball. These early pioneers weren't just baseball players, they were activists, challenging the racial boundaries of the time and proving that talent wasn't bound by race. During the early years, African American teams often resorted to barnstorming tours, traveling the country, playing exhibition games wherever they could. Even though African American players were excluded from the major leagues, their spirit and determination led to the eventual creation of the Negro Leagues in 1920. This wasn't just a baseball league, it was a movement, a statement of resilience in the face of oppression. One of the most influential figures at this time was Andrew Rube Foster, known as the father of the Negro Leagues. Foster, a talented pitcher and manager, saw that the African American teams needed organization and structure. His vision for the Negro Leagues wasn't just about giving players a chance to compete, it was showing the world that they were equal to any white ball player. On February 13, 1920, a groundbreaking event took place here in Kansas City in a meeting at the Paseo YMCA, which is just a block or so away from the museum. A group of visionaries gathered to create a league that would change the course of baseball history. This moment marked the birth of the first official Negro Leagues baseball organization. Here next to this statue of Rube Foster, we see our first major artifact, which is the original charter document that created the Negro National League, the first organized league for African American players. This document represents not just the start of a new era in baseball, but the culmination of years of struggle, resilience, and hope for African American athletes. Signed by Rube Foster, the man credited as the father of the Negro Leagues, along with 7 other pioneering team owners and baseball executives, this charter laid the foundation for a league that would provide a platform for African American talent to flourish. Standing before this charter, we see more than just ink on paper. We see a declaration of independence for American athletes, a statement that they too could be part of America's pastime. It was a declaration that changed the face of sports forever. The golden era of the Negro Leagues is considered the height of African American baseball, spanning roughly from the 1930s to the early 1950s. During this time, the Negro Leagues became a symbol of excellence, with its players showcasing unmatched skill, athleticism, and grit in the face of segregation and adversity. These were the years when legends were born, players like Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, and Cool Papa Bell. They were more than just stars of the game. They were icons who transcended baseball and became symbols of hope and pride for African Americans across the nation. Here at the museum, we see some of the very equipment these legendary players used on the field. From Satchel Paige's fastball to Josh Gibson's power hitting, the golden era of the Negro Leagues produced some of the most thrilling and awe-inspiring moments in baseball history. The players of the Golden Era played in a league that rivaled Major League Baseball in every way. The stadiums were packed with fans and the competition was fierce. This was a time when the Negro Leagues were at the top of their game, with teams barnstorming across the country, bringing baseball to every corner of America. And the teams of the Golden Era were legendary in their own right. The Kansas City Monarchs, for example, were one of the most successful and beloved teams in the league, featuring future Hall of Famers like Satchel Paige and Jackie Robinson. The Pittsburgh Crawfords boasted a roster that included stars like Josh Gibson and the great Oscar Charleston. And the Homestead Grays, led by Gibson, were a powerhouse with some of the best talent in the game. Though the doors to Major League Baseball remained closed during the Golden Era, the contributions of the Negro Leagues were invaluable in shaping the future of baseball and American sports. Here we celebrate these athletes, heroes who paved the way for equality in sports and whose legacies continue to inspire us all. One of the uniforms that we're taking a look at here is actually that of Newt Allen, who was a Monarch. Allen was one of the brightest stars of the Kansas City Monarchs and a key figure in the Negro Leagues during the golden era of the 1930s and 1940s. Allen was known for his versatility, playing both second base and shortstop, and had an exceptional bat. His uniform, featuring the iconic Kansas City Monarchs lettering, symbolizes the heart of a team that was one of the most successful and beloved in the Negro Leagues. The Kansas City Monarchs were a powerhouse in the Negro Leagues, with legendary figures like Satchel Paige and Jackie Robinson passing through the ranks. The Monarchs helped define the league's golden era, and Newt Allen was right there in the middle of it all, contributing to the Monarchs' dominance on the field. Known for his steady play and clutch performance, Newt Allen made a significant impact during the Monarchs' legendary barnstorming tours, traveling the country and facing off against both Major League stars and other Negro League teams. His uniform stands as a symbol of his pride and his contributions to the team's legacy. Allen wasn't just a key player on the field, he was also part of the fabric of the Monarchs' success. Alongside players like Hilton Smith and Ernie Banks, Newt Allen helped to elevate the team to one of the most respected in the Negro Leagues. One of the greatest players in the National League and possibly in baseball itself is Leroy Robert Page, better known as Satchel Paige. Page was born in 1906 in Mobile, Alabama. His career spanned several decades, beginning in the Negro Leagues in the 1920s and eventually transitioning to Major League Baseball and the integration of the sport in the late 1940s. Page's nickname Satchel came from his job as a young boy carrying luggage at a railway station. He gained fame for his incredible pitching arm and an array of dazzling pitches, including his famous fastball and hesitation pitch. Page's career was marked by his longevity, with reports claiming he was still pitching at an advanced age. He famously pitched in his 50s, making his major league debut in 1948 with the Cleveland Indians at the age of 42, though some speculate he was much older. Before joining the Major Leagues, Page was a standout star in the Negro Leagues, playing for teams like the Birmingham Black Barons and the Kansas City Monarchs. He traveled the country, often pitching in exhibition games that captivated fans and showcased his unmatched talent. Page was known for his confidence on the mound and his showmanship, often engaging the crowd with his antics while dominating batters. In 1971, Page became the first player from the Negro Leagues to be inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame, a testament to his impact on the game and his remarkable career. Our third major artifact that we're looking at here, this jersey that says the Redbirds on it, was a jersey worn by Page during his time with the Redbirds, a key chapter in his illustrious career. Known for his dominant fastball and dazzling pitching repertoire, Page played for the Redbirds in the late 1930s, a team in the Negro American Leagues that made its mark on the baseball world. Though the St. Louis Redbirds were not as widely known as some other teams in the Negro League, Page's presence on the mound made every game an event. Whether it was his incredible arm or his showmanship, Satchel Paige knew how to command a crowd. He was a player, he was an entertainer, a barrier breaker, and a symbol of the incredible impact of the Negro Leagues on the sport of baseball. In cities across the country, the Negro Leagues helped raise the spirits of local communities. The pride of having such extraordinary athletes represent them was immeasurable. These teams gave communities a sense of belonging and pride that transcended the game itself. Beyond the professional level, the Negro Leagues inspired a love of the game in young children. Kids idolized the players, practicing their swings in the streets and fields, dreaming of the day that they might make it to the big leagues. These local heroes showed the youth of these communities that they could achieve greatness no matter the obstacles they face. The impact of the Negro Leagues also extended to local businesses. Storefronts proudly displayed team banners, and local merchants often sponsored teams, making baseball a truly community driven enterprise. For many African American owned businesses, the Negro Leagues provided not only a platform for local support, but also a chance for economic growth during a time of widespread segregation and inequality. For local communities, the Negro Leagues weren't just about baseball. They were about pride, representation, and resilience. These teams symbolized the strength of African American culture and perseverance in the face of adversity. And in turn, the communities provided unwavering support, creating an unbreakable bond that transcended the field. Our fourth artifact that we're looking at are these turnstiles. These turnstiles that are from the era of the Negro Leagues that are simple in design but have a very rich meaning. These turnstiles weren't just mechanisms to control entry, they stood at the gates of segregation, separating the lives of black fans and players from their white counterparts. These turnstiles, like the stadiums they stood in, were part of the infrastructure that separated African American fans and players from the world of Major League Baseball. But for the fans and players of the Negro Leagues, these barriers only fueled their drive to create a league that was their own, a league where they could play on equal footing, show their talents, and connect with their communities. April 15th, 1947 marks one of the most important dates in baseball history, the day Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier and became the first African American to play in the major leagues. His courage, integrity, and talent would forever change the landscape of the game. At the heart of the National Negro Leagues Baseball Museum lies a truly remarkable artifact. Artifact number 5 we're looking at today. This is a signed baseball that tells a story of friendship, history, and unexpected connection. This baseball, signed by both African American baseball legends and a white Hall of Famer, holds a deeper significance than its signatures alone provide. This isn't just any baseball. It's a ball signed by 4 pioneering African American players: Jackie Robinson, Jim Gillum, Joe Black, and Roy Campanella on one side, and the legendary Ty Cobb on the other. Robinson, Gillum, Black, and Campanella are all icons of Major League Baseball, African American players who helped integrate the game and pave the way for future generations. On the other hand, Ty Cobb was a white player, often regarded as one of the greatest of all time, known for his skill and fierce competitive nature. This ball was actually belonged to John Moore, who somehow was able to get the signatures of Robinson, Gillum, Black, and Campanella, but during a game in Chicago was able to get Ty Cobb to sign. The ball symbolizes more than just a collection of autographs. It represents a turning point in the relationship between black and white players in baseball and the recognition that greatness transcends race. Though Cobb's legacy is undeniably marred by his prejudices, the act of signing the ball with Robinson and his teammates marks a rare moment of connection and mutual respect. By the end of his first season, Jackie Robinson was not only a household name, but he had proven that talent, not skin color, should define a player's worth. Robinson was named Rookie of the Year in 1947, and over the course of his 10-year career with the Dodgers, he won the MVP award, helped lead his team to 6 pennants, and played a key role in changing the hearts and minds of baseball fans across the country. Today, Robinson's number 42 is retired across all of Major League Baseball in honor of his incredible contributions to the sport and society. Every year on April 15th, teams across the league celebrate Jackie Robinson Day, ensuring that his legacy lives on in the hearts of every baseball fan. The Negro Leagues played a vital role in the eventual integration of Major League Baseball. Through their perseverance, black players proved their worth and made the case for the eventual integration of the sport. Jackie Robinson may have been the first to step onto the major league field, but he was not the last. His courage opened the doors for future generation of players like Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, and many others to follow. Our sixth artifact that we're looking at are these jerseys of the various teams of the Negro Leagues. Each jersey on display here tells a unique story. From the bright, bold colors to the stitching and design, these uniforms were worn by players who carved their names into the history of baseball. The National Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is not a Hall of Fame museum for individual players, but a recognition of all Negro League baseball players. Let's take a look at some of these iconic team jerseys and the legends who wore them. We will see as we go along the jerseys of the Kansas City Monarchs, one of the most successful and storied teams in the Negro Leagues. The Monarchs were a powerhouse with players like Satchel Paige, Jackie Robinson, and Hilton Smith gracing their rosters. Their uniforms, awful simple yet striking, became symbols of excellence and pride both on the field and in their hometown of Kansas City. The Monarchs were known for their fierce competition and their ability to bring fans from all walks of life together. As the team often played in front of sold-out crowds, their jerseys became a symbol of hope for many African American communities who had been excluded from Major League Baseball. We also see jerseys from the Homestead Grays, a legendary team that dominated the Negro Leagues in the 1930s and 40s. With stars like Josh Gibson, Buck Leonard, and Cool Papa Bell, the Grays were a force to be reckoned with. Their jerseys were as much a symbol of their unmatched skill on the field as was their place in the hearts of baseball fans across the nation. Another team that left its mark on the Negro League's history were the Pittsburgh Crawfords. This one of the jerseys that we see, is worn by some of the league's most memorable players, including players like Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, and Oscar Charleston. Finally, we have the Newark Eagles, another legendary team. They wore this jersey with pride. Known for their fierce competition in the 1940s, the Eagles produced some of the finest players in Negro League history, including Hall of Famers like Willie Wells and Biz Mackey. And we have another team worth noting, which are the Birmingham Black Barons. Though they were not as well known as some of the larger teams, the Black Barons played an important role in the Negro Leagues, producing incredible players like the legendary future major leaguer Willie Mays. Their jerseys are a testament to the hardworking players who gave everything to their game. Buck O'Neil was not just a remarkable player, but also a tireless ambassador for the Negro Leagues and a passionate advocate for the recognition of its players. In fact, the Negro Leagues Museum that we've been walking through today would probably not exist if it were not for him. His contributions to the game, both on and off the field, are immortalized here in this exhibit. Born in 1911 in Florida, John Jordan Buck O'Neil was a first baseman and manager for the Kansas City Monarchs, one of the most successful and well-loved teams in the Negro Leagues. O'Neil's playing career was nothing short of impressive, but it was his leadership and work as an advocate for Negro League players that made him a true legend. During his playing days with the Monarchs, O'Neil was known for his athleticism, leadership, and infectious personality. He was a standout first baseman and later became the first African-American coach in Major League Baseball, serving with the Chicago Cubs. As the first African-American coach, O'Neil continued to break barriers, earning the respect of players and managers alike. He was instrumental in the development of young talent, including future Hall of Famer Ernie Banks. But perhaps his most significant role was a bridge between the world of Negro League Baseball and Major League Baseball. Even after his playing days, O'Neil remained dedicated to preserving the history of the Negro Leagues. He became one of the most vocal and passionate historians of the league, tirelessly working to ensure that its contributions were never forgotten. Through his efforts, he brought awareness to the struggles and triumphs of the players who had been excluded from the major leagues for so long. Buck O'Neil's dream was to see his fellow Negro League players inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, a long overdue honor. Though he did not live to see that dream fully realized, his work paved the way for the eventual recognition of Negro League stars like Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, and Cool Papa Bell. As a player, manager, coach, historian, and ambassador, Buck O'Neil helped ensure that the stories of the Negro Leagues would be told for generations to come. His tireless efforts, boundless optimism, and undying love for the game will never be forgotten. And that's why our final artifact that we're looking at today, artifact number 7, is a signed baseball by none other than Buck O'Neil. Our final stop on our tour of the National Negro Leagues Baseball Museum is a walk around the Field of Legends. Here we see life-size statues of many of the most famous players in Negro Leagues baseball history, including such players as Satchel Paige, Cool Papa Bell, and Josh Gibson. As we take this tour around the Field of Legends, think about the hardships and the talents that brought joy and inspiration to thousands of fans, and the contributions these players made that laid the groundwork for future generation of athletes. Each of the artifacts that we've seen along the way represent not just a player or a team, but a community and a movement that fought for equality both off and on the field.